This week, the US Federal Trade Commission settled a case against a software company that make a range of what is nominally known as stalkaware apps that pretty much allow you to stalk another person. You're probably wondering what the hell that is. Good news. I have two people that can explain it. We have Ray Johnson, the editor of Junkie, and we have Claire Riley from the technology website CNET. So just explain to me what stalkaware is.
It's essentially something on your phone. Maybe it's an app installed. Maybe it's something you can't even see existing on your phone that affects the way you use it. And in some cases, to give you an example, it might send your location. It might mirror every single text you get and send that to another phone. It might mark which calls are coming in and going out, which web pages you visit, things like that. In some cases is marketed as a way to keep track of your family. So maybe if you've got I can see the argument for a kid. I mean, maybe just set up better parenting systems. But to see what your kid is doing, to make sure they're not visiting any dodgy websites or having messages from strangers. Yeah. So that's, I guess, how they try and market them. But I've seen also websites that say, catch out your cheating spouse, keep an eye on your partner, and a lot of the time these kinds of things are used in controlling relationships.
How are these things allowed on the App Store?
Google Play have a pretty good policy against them and they will remove them. But a lot of times they kind of fly under the radar disguised as other things. So that, they'll get approved under, one particular authorization certificate, but there's stuff hidden within it that allows it to, it's sneaky.
Wow.
It's
and
sneaky.
also a thing you can do with your phone where you boot it. Basically, you get rid of the operating system, so iOS in the case of an iPhone or Android. You kind of strip it off and you put in a new bare bones system that allows you to kind of get around a lot of the protections that are in place. So, I mean, I read something that was, if you're concerned that maybe you have this kind of stuff lingering on your phone that you might not know about. Things to look out for are not really being able to turn off your phone, your battery draining really quickly.
Which is hard to identify.
Yeah, right. But core apps that should be there, like the basic ones that come with iPhone or with Android, them not being on there. And in the case of iOS, there is an app called Cydia, Cydia. If you see that on your phone, then that's a sign that your phone has been kind of booted.
There's also the Root Checker app is good for Android. But another way that people are accessing this as well is just straight up using your Apple ID and password with programs that can just give you straight up access to it, can disable two-factor authentication. And
that's the thing where they use your email and your phone number as well, right?
And send you a text message to say, hey, is this you? Like they can straight up disable that, and then they have access to everything that's on your iCloud.
I mean, that's what we talk about in security, right? That so often it's not the case that you're getting hacked or someone's installed something without you knowing it. It's the human factor of you've got a really simple password, or maybe in the case of a relationship, you've shared your password with a partner, and then that's the kind of way that someone can get in. It bears reminding that, just be really private with that kind of stuff, because it is so much of our lives are on our phones now. But I mean, it's not just stalkaware. I interviewed a bunch of people for a story I did last year about technology facilitated abuse, right? Which is way more common than we think it is. And, domestic violence and domestic abuse used to be about having access to a person. They're in your home, you know them. Now you can get to them through social media. You can get to them by installing things on their phone, installing things on the kid's phone to be able to track what the kids are doing, tracking your social media movements. So I heard stories about caseworkers who saw an ex-partner tracking photos of the kids on Facebook and working out where they'd moved to. So this family had tried to kind of leave an abusive ex. The worst story I heard was someone who had a restraining order against their ex-partner, and the person didn't have any way of accessing them, couldn't access them through Facebook, they were blocked, but still had the person's bank details, so would send them 5 cents, 10 cents, and would send abusive messages in the transfer description of their internet banking. So it's it's the same problem that has always been around. We could, talk about
technology
all the things behind
amplifies,
that.
and it extends the best and worst of us.
Yeah, so I guess the PSA, the public service announcement out of this is just kind of check what's on your phone. Also, I mean, that's a good reminder. Do you need all those apps that are pulling down your data?
Yeah.
Do you need all those apps that are kind of following you? It's just a good reminder.
Just specifically with the case in the US, when the US Federal Trade Commission say they've settled with this company that made, it's a studio called Retina X Studio, and they make apps like Mobile Spy, Phone Sheriff, and Teen Shield, to speak to the thing we were saying before. What does that actually mean that they've settled with them? Like, does it mean that these apps are no longer available, or does it mean nothing at all?
No, it means that they've asked them to destroy all the data that they're currently have there, that they were just straight up storing and not very securely, apparently, as well. And to up their security. But there was nothing that I saw in there about them having to actually cease operations.
There was a company in 2014 and it had some name like Spy Max or Stalk Your Partner Max.
Yeah.
And they were actually, basically it's kind of a cease and desist, you know, you are selling something illegal, stop doing that. So in the same way that they would bust up a company, I'm sure a lot of these app companies are 3 people who just start somewhere else. But, you know, I think it is about taking a stance and saying, actually having a legal precedent to say, all right, well, we're cracking down on this kind of stuff now and we've got our eyes on you. So,
all right, there is lots more of this in the podcast if you download this show. It turns out that Mark Zuckerberg has decided that political advertising can now lie. We'll explain in the full podcast. And with that, I shall leave you. Thanks, guys.